I'm Whitney.
I'm Mindy.
And I'm Deb.
We're three best friends who love nerdy things.
Well, some people think we're nerdy, but we think we're pretty awesome.
This is Our Nerdiest Thing.
This season, we are discussing Jennifer L. Armentrout's From Blood and Ash, all of the books in that series, plus the Flesh and Fire series as well. We are spoiler friendly, so listen at your own risk. Hello, fellow nerds, and welcome to Our Nerdiest Thing. Today, we are doing our Season 2 wrap-up and discussing From Blood and Ash and that entire series by Jennifer L. Armentrout. Before we get into it, Deborah, will you share about our nerdiest cocktail?
Absolutely. I can't even take credit for this one because you made it. And it's really, really delicious. So this cocktail is called Here We Go Again. It has soda water. Is that soda water, Whitney?
No, just like Coke.
Oh, okay.
Coca-Cola.
I drank it, so I didn't see what was in it. So we actually used zero sugar Pepsi tonight. Whipped cream vodka, grenadine, and a lime slice. And it's really, really delicious. So delicious that I switched to wine so I can be coherent in this episode. We've already done 2 interviews
I'm on my third one.
So I know.
I was channeling Kieran and the Atlanteans with that Here We Go Again. Like Cass is going off book, off script. Here we go.
For our listeners, one thing we're going to do in season 3 that's really fun is we're going to talk about what our nerdiest cocktail pairs with in the chapters. So I can't wait for that.
Yeah, so like this cocktail would pair well with going off script.
Asking a lot of questions.
Right.
Yeah. Here we go again.
Yes.
Poor Kieran. I don't feel that bad for him.
He really goes through it with his friendships and relationships. I feel like,
for sure.
Oh, bless his heart. So yeah, we're going to talk about From Blood and Ash and the entire series, including the Flesh and Fire books, and just talk about what we love about this book, basically, which we've been doing the entire season.
Talking about that all season?
We're just going to wrap it all up by hitting it home.
We're going to put it in a little Cass-shaped bow right on top for you.
I feel like that's very sexual, and I can't quite figure out how.
Be very sexual.
I can't
he can wrap me up anytime.
Oh man! So let's just start with our favorite moment or favorite twist from this first book in the series, From Blood and Ash.
So I have to ask if it's okay if in some of these questions you ask us if I have 2 or 3.
I have a couple.
Okay.
I was going to say I have a few.
I have a couple for
a
couple.
It's a really good series, and I can't narrow it down.
It's hard to pick just one. Yeah.
Okay, may I go first?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
My favorite moment or twist. My first one would be essentially when Poppy cuts off Lord Mazine's arms.
Oh yeah, that's
I know that sounds really depraved, but the reason that I loved it is if he had survived that, he would have never been able to touch her again, which I found very poetic.
Yeah.
And then I would say the same for Duchess Tierman when she dies later in the series. They literally destroy her body so she can never hurt them again. So I really love that, and I like the symbolism behind them never being able to get to her again. Right?
Yeah.
My second one is when Hawk tells Poppy, and I hate to say that this is a favorite scene, but it was like the scene for me in this first book where I was like hooked. When Hawk tells Poppy that he knows it's real and that she shouldn't forget. And I knew that fucker was up to something in that moment. And we talked about a couple episodes ago that I cried because I was like, what's about to happen? This is all about to go downhill. And it did.
It does. Yeah.
And I think it's really good writing that I loved to hate him for a whole book after that, but still wanted them to end up together.
Yeah. Yeah. Mindy, what about you?
So I kind of went generally speaking and then specifically, and then I have a bonus. So
special mention.
Yes.
We are not concise on this podcast. Me doing 3 already.
So generally speaking, something I love about this book is all of the Poppy and Hawk banter. It's just so brilliant. The way that they interact and they connect, and then they have all this sassy banter. It's just perfect.
And they're funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes banter is just angsty in books like these.
Oh, no.
But they're genuinely funny. Yeah.
Out loud for sure. And then specifically, I love the library scene where they're talking about Miss Willis' diary. I love Poppy basically heckling Jericho about his hand all the time.
And I still have my hands.
Yeah.
And of course, Under the Willow Tree is one of my favorites.
That's a good one.
And then my bonus is that from the podcast, I have a favorite moment.
Oh, what is it?
It's when we talked about in our nerdiest vocabulary about Jericho and the balls of Jericho.
The balls of Jericho. I survived.
I created a graphic for
Yes,
it.
it was fantastic.
That really stuck with me, and I think I had nightmares about it. Someone's balls cutting off my air supply.
I just thought that was super funny.
You wouldn't be able to make that sound either.
Inside your own head. I technically only wrote down one favorite moment, but it's so broad that it's like 17 total. My favorite moment, I just wrote the great right scene because, I mean, we talked about it in that episode when we talked about those chapters, but just the way that JLA wrote those, and every time Poppy feels some kind of emotion, you as a reader are right there with her, and the building of the tension with Under the Willow Tree, and then running into Victor, and then discovering the Duke's body, and then the attack. Like, all of it is just so well written, and it's very action packed without feeling like, wait, what's happening? You know, it's just so well written.
Build up.
Yeah, I love it. The tension and all the different types of tensions are just chef's kiss.
So speaking of tension, can we talk about then our favorite spicy scene?
Well, yeah.
Because the tension is what makes this so good.
So good.
Right? And so I have a favorite spicy scene from this book and then one from the series.
The whole series.
Right.
Yeah.
So from this book, here's specifically what I wrote down. Any man that can get a woman off without taking off her pants is hot as fuck to me.
I mean, that is some skill.
In the Blood Forest, he gives Poppy an orgasm over her trousers. These aren't leggings. They're not thin. I'm picturing her wearing thick denim jeans.
Jeans, yes.
And he is giving her an orgasm through her jeans. Yeah. And to me,
that's a man.
Right. First of all, that tells me he knows what he's doing, right? And it takes them a while before they have sex, but you know it's going to be great because he's already paid attention to her and shown that he's a generous lover and all of these things. So my second favorite one, and this is my favorite scene overall in the entire series, would be when they essentially go at it in the carriage. So in book
after
2,
the Duchess.
In book 2, whenever Duchess Tierman is destroyed, they bring the Ascended in to try to get Poppy back. Poppy and Cass have finally come clean about their feelings to one another. Like, finally. It's taken 2 books to really get here. And they think they're going to die. Mm-hmm. And there is a moment in the book where she even says, like, we finally just told each other and, like, now it's over.
Yeah.
And that built so much tension. And it was like they had life-affirming makeup sex, and I don't know if it gets better than that. Plus, he like bent her over in a carriage, which is pretty hot. So, but again, both of those scenes are just ripe with tension. That's really where it comes from, and the build-up.
And they're both also very much in the moment, very spontaneous. Like, we're just feeling this, and we're gonna go with it, despite the not really appropriate situations.
I would either of them like to be Castile, where I could just like fuck anytime I want. Like, you know what I mean? Because like even later on in the books, he fucks her in the garden. He's like,
well, yeah, that's
all right. Well, and that was my number 3 for the record.
Honorable mention.
My honorable mention fucking scene. So he essentially tells the wolf, and he's like, we're going to need a minute. And Kieran's like, yeah, you do. And then they just go fuck in someone's garden.
You know what I was just thinking when you were talking about the carriage scene? It's funny because that scene has a lot of similarities and parallels to the scene with Feyre and Rhys in book 3 of ACOTAR, Wings in Ruin, where they're like the moans of the dying men outside the tent while we were having sex, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, this is so weird. But in From Blood and Ash, it works, right? And I think it's the
same thing, but they don't talk about there being dead people all around them. That's why.
But there are, right?
There are.
Like, it's
Everyone's
the same
dead.
kind of thing, but I think it's the passion and the in the moment spontaneity.
It's that life affirming sex,
right? And it is life affirming for Feyre and Rhys too. But the way that scene is written is so like slow motion jazz music background kind of, you know what I mean? Like, it's way, like it's not as spontaneous and in the moment feeling. It's a lot more like tender and slow, and I think that's what makes it weird.
Yeah,
if that makes
it's
any
not
sense.
like we have to have each other. It's
Right.
we could take our time
It's
while
not a
everyone's
frantic,
dying around us. Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Yes.
we're in this moment and we've got to get this done. It's
I
more
will
like-
say, I will say one thing about the From Blood and Ash scene, though, is everyone except for one ascended is dead. So it's not like people are dying around them.
Yeah,
everyone's
that's true.
dead. But
The only moans are coming from inside the carriage.
did Sarah J. Maas have to say in the book they could hear
I
the
know.
moans of dying around them? And I've heard in the graphic audio that it's super weird because they're like, ah! And then in the books they're like, oh, I'm dying. I don't want to listen to that.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, we're kind of veering off course a little bit, but I think that she wrote that in the Akatar one to give that life affirming feel to it.
It was life affirming,
But
right?
you don't need that,
Right,
and the franticness in From Blood and Ash is what gives you that
Yes.
life affirming feeling.
Yes.
Yeah,
What was your favorite spicy scene, Whit?
minus the willow tree. I just
like, why?
I just like it.
It is a really, really
is
sweet.
The tension is so well written, and it's detailed without being like boring. It doesn't feel like it moves super slow, even though it kind of does, right? Like that scene is several pages when really all that they're doing is like sitting under a tree and making out.
Right.
But it's so detailed with like how it feels physically and what she's thinking and wondering what he's thinking. And I think maybe it just like took me back to the first major makeout, like with Robbie, right? Of like, I totally understand that entire situation. Like I remember feeling like that, and young love, ain't it
makes your heart
grand?
sweet.
You know,
Can I tell a story? And this will be my husband's nerdiest thing of his life. So
yes, please.
my husband and I were, casually dating. We hadn't kissed yet. My husband still is very sweet and innocent in a lot of ways. And his favorite movie of all time is That Thing You Do. And it is a really, really good doing that thing you do.
It's a good movie.
If you've not seen it, it's a really, really cute movie. It's very much like Beatles Mania is what it's replicating. Having said that, at the very end with Liv Tyler, there's been this slow burn romance where she's dating the asshole of the pack, and then the good guy and Liv Tyler get together, and he asks her, when's the last time you've passionately been kissed? And my husband looked at me and said that. It worked, for the record. But later on, I was like, really, dude? You could have just put your tongue in my mouth. I would have been fine with it. But it was a really, really sweet moment, but definitely something we still giggle about. And during the pandemic, that cast watched the movie, like they live streamed it together and talked
that's
over it.
fun.
Very Mystery Science Theater.
Yeah.
And we sat down and watched it together, and it was really magical.
Oh, that's cute.
That's a great idea. I
Yeah,
swear
I
some
love
of the
that.
best ideas came. I mean, I know it sucked because it was the pandemic, but some of the best, like,
We had
cool
some
stuff
innovative
came-
moments.
Yes,
Yeah,
like when you're
creativity, yeah.
stuck doing that and you got to figure out something to do. They had some very creative things come out of that for sure.
Mindy, what was your favorite spicy scene?
This one was a tough one for me.
There's a lot to choose from.
I know, but I actually went with, like you, Deborah, I went with the Blood Forest finger bang. Because a little bit different reason than you, though. I actually love. Okay, so first of all, let me start off by saying I don't usually like to be talked to while I'm having sex because it just sounds weird. Like, I love my husband, but he's not a dirty talker. Yeah,
It's like the episode of Friends
But,
where
like,
he's like,
they're-
vulva.
but they actually kind of have a little bit of banter while they're doing this.
Yeah.
There's some really like sweet moments and there's some funny moments. And I just think that JLA makes even the simplest act so fucking hot. Like
Yeah.
this was, I was so turned on and I never thought that I would be turned on by that. But I was
By him rubbing on her over her clothes. How did she write that so well?
I know. Like,
It's one of those times where I'm like, did somebody do that to you?
Please let
Is
us
this
know.
all
your
imagination?
inspiration.
Yeah, is this all imagination or what? I wish I could ask all of the authors.
too.
those
Well,
questions.
you've asked some.
I know I have.
And they blocked us on Instagram.
No,
they didn't.
One
I'm kidding.
author did say that her scenes were mostly husband inspired. And I was like, well, congratulations.
off the record, you're going to have to remind me who that is.
I'll tell you later.
You know who I really want to know, because this author really got me back into paranormal romance around the time that Mindy and I became friends, and it was something that we really bonded over, is J.R. Ward. Mm-hmm. She loves talking about oral sex in her books, mostly for the woman. And I remember at the time being like, your husband knows how to do this, doesn't he? Because she writes it really, really well.
She really does.
Yeah, you're just like, congratulations.
Yeah. Good for you.
Good for you, girl.
You do you. And you're like, well, where were you this weekend? I was doing research.
Yeah, research for my book. Don't ask any more questions. So let's talk about our least favorite moment or least favorite twist, which I feel like is hard for us with a book like this because we love this book and this entire series.
I had no problems figuring this out.
I very easily chose one too, but it's not, and I feel like all three of us, this is probably true for. It's not a least favorite because it wasn't well written or because it didn't work in the story, but because it made me upset.
That all
100%. Well, tell us what it is. What?
Well, my least favorite moment is the barn in New Haven when it all comes crashing down and she realizes that Kieran is a dissenter and that Hawk is not who he says he is and that they've been working and lying to her to get her to trust them, and like she is just completely devastated. That's my least favorite moment because it just makes me upset, not because it's not well written or that it doesn't work for the story or anything like that. It's so good and important.
What I think it is, they also broke our trust as a reader.
Yes.
Right.
You're going along with Poppy, right? Everything she feels, we are also feeling as the reader, and that's just such good writing.
Mine also kind of goes along with that. So I started out by saying the scene with Phillips. That's where I started when I was thinking about this, about how he comes to get her and he's trying to protect her and all the guards are dead at this point, right. And Phillips gets crossbowed essentially.
Yes.
But then it turned into essentially everyone around Poppy has ended up dead at this point. Everyone she cared about, right?
Yeah.
So you've got Rylan, Victor, Lauren and Defina, Tawny, who's estranged from her at this point.
Right.
Poppy's brother is estranged with her. All of her guards that were traveling with her for protection are dead at this point. And she has literally nobody.
I mean, not to mention that she also lost her parents.
Right.
You know?
Right. And she has learned that everyone in her life has deceived her. And the only person that she has, I mean, I think she kind of has Kieran at this point too, right? Kind of. But the only person she feels like she can't trust for anything. And that's extremely heartbreaking for me. But again, not least favorite because I don't think it was really great in the book. I think it's actually amazing. But God, it just rips my fucking heart out.
It sucks to read.
Yes.
What about you, Min?
So I do have 3, but they're all short and sweet. And they're all because they made me feel something either sad or angry or irritated. Number 1, when Hawk is being a dick in the barn, so same as yours.
Yeah.
That just really burned me.
Oh, he makes me so mad in that scene.
Also, when Duke and Mazine are violating Poppy, that just makes me want to vomit. And then when Victor dies, those all sucked.
That's a tough.
Yeah.
Victor's death, especially, I feel like is tough.
Well, and
to
I
read.
lost my dad a couple years ago, so that just hits different this time around.
Yeah, it
So.
does.
We love you, Mindy Moo.
Love you all too.
What about biggest revelation?
There's one that really sticks out for me.
Is it dirty?
A little bit. So
What sticks out, Deb?
So my first revelation, and it goes with this, is like, holy moly, Kieran's a Wolven. Like when he shifts in the book, even though
That's a great one,
something's going on at this point, like something bad is happening, the Kieran thing really blew me away that he was a Wolven. But what really bothers me about that revelation is that you find out later that he and Hawk can both smell when Poppy is horny. And that is so embarrassing.
Yeah,
I mean, I know that men get slack about like popping up boners and like weird places and stuff, but women get horny like that too. We can just hide it. So even later on in
we
the
just
series,
get elevated heart rates and blood pressure.
Exactly. But even later on in the series, when she's telling him she hates him, but she's turned on by him, he can smell it. I personally would hate that. And also some days I like to skip a shower. I'm just...
Oh man, what about you, Mindy?
So mine are more personal revelations opposed to being things that are like revealed in the plot. So that's kind of how I took it. But from the first time they have sex, I realized how much they talk while they're having sex.
Yeah.
This is the first time when I read it. And again, I like it, but I never realized exactly how much dialogue goes on while they're having sex. Like, it's not just describing, which JLA does fantastically, but she weaves in dialogue where they're really, like, in my mind, it should be in there, but maybe it should, I wouldn't have thought it should, but it works. It totally works. So that was a weird realization for me. Then the other one I had was, I actually hadn't realized exactly how disgusting the Duchess is until I really, really, really read that part when she admits she knew what the Duke did to Poppy and brushes her off, telling her she wouldn't understand why she didn't stop it. She is such a fucking bitch in that moment.
Yeah.
And I knew she was, but when
what makes it worse is that Poppy in that moment empathizes with her.
I know, and
because
Poppy still
she's
okay
oh, he was doing it to her too.
Yeah.
Right. And so Poppy takes it as a poor thing, whereas really the Duchess was just so fucking what?
Because Poppy's a nice person and I'm not.
That's arguable, Mindy. You are a nice
when it comes to the Duchess, I'm not.
Well, okay. That's fair. So my biggest revelation is finding out that Hawk is actually Prince Castile. Because I think I mentioned before in an earlier episode, I knew that Hawk was going to end up being an Atlantean. I caught on to the hints about fangs or whatever, and I thought that Hawk was going to end up being a brother to Prince Castile. So when that revelation happened, the first time I read it, I really was genuinely like, what? That and the Wolven.
I didn't catch that.
What? That and the Wolven reveal, because again, we're going on this ride with Poppy, and the information we have as the reader is that Wolven are completely extinct, right?
To be quite frank, Kieran and Delano and all of them haven't really done anything at this point to make us think they would be supernatural. Have they?
Until they turn into Wolven, you mean?
Right.
Yeah, the only thing is just the similar eye color. That's the only connection.
Castile, for example, she has said, he talks like he's older. He moves really quickly.
Right.
But there's nothing about Kieran or Delano where you're like, well, what's up with them?
Yeah.
She talks about their beautiful eyes, but they're all supposed to be hot. So I just took
right.
it to surface level,
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that was a huge revelation for me too. But I think the Hawk being Castile is always going to be my biggest one from this first book.
So we know this book is being auctioned by Hulu right now by the chick that does The Boys, which I'm super duper excited about because it's going to be gritty, which I love because I don't want this to be sweetened up by any point. And I don't think that Jennifer Armentrout does either. But for the love of God, do not make the Wolven look like Twilight wolves and do not figure out how to make them talk with Poppy in their heads without doing it like Twilight did.
She's dying anyway.
I am Jacob Black, son of Ephraim Black. I am the Alpha. And their voice gets all dissonant, and I'm like, no.
I can't imagine how that whole primal notum thing is going to come across in general. They've got to figure it out though, because it's.
Please don't make it corny, you guys.
Know. They're going to make it like a laser beam from Poppy to Kieran or whatever,
but not like a 1980s like
Xanadu,
Xanadu. Yes. I don't think I've ever seen Xanadu. I'm thinking more of the background of those pictures in school where they have
yes.
Is that what Xanadu?
That's kind of Xanadu.
Very, very similar.
That's pretty much it.
Producer of The Boys, please don't do that either.
I know, right? Please, no. So who do you think is the MVP of book 1?
I want to know your point of view on this.
Mine? I have an actual choice and then an honorable mention. So
we need to make little awards for our people.
Right? Yeah. Make another graphic. Here we go. I think my MVP, well, not I think, I chose my MVP of the whole book to be Hawk because he is hilarious. I feel like, obviously Poppy is the main character. Right. And so that almost kind of feels to me like, well, I need to pick somebody that's not the main character, but I picked the second main character. So that also doesn't make sense, but he's funny. He is the character that is pushing the story forward, right? Like Poppy for the majority of this book, if not all of it, is a very passive person in this world, right? Like stuff is just happening to her, not by her choice or by her fault. It's just the way that it is. Hawk is making stuff happen, right? And pushing the story forward and making things interesting and more dramatic and creating a lot of tension, which makes for a good story. So he's my overall pick for the MVP. My special mention goes to Miss Willa because her diary is a lot of great content. And also, as a character, you find out later, she is the woman in the Red Pearl at the very beginning of the book that sends Poppy to Hawk's room.
So the reason I wanted you to go first is because I thought you might bring up Miss Willa because she is my book one MVP.
Your MVP?
Yeah. And I said the same thing. So there's this woman at the Red Pearl at the beginning of the book that sends Poppy to the quote unquote empty room that Hawk is in. We find out later that Miss Willa Collins is actually a seer and that she knew that Poppy needed to go up there. And so she kind of pushes them together more prematurely than they would have. And also before he could kidnap her without getting to know her. Right. So I think for me, it's Miss Willa Collins.
I think
She's
that's
my
a great
MVP.
choice.
Who's your MVP?
Well, I
Mindy?
feel very basic because, I mean, come on, it's got to be our girl Poppy. Like,
I mean, I picked Hawk, so
she has so many layers. Like, she's smart, she's sassy, she kills Craven, she helps people die with dignity, she can wield a dagger, she fucks up Lord Mazine and repeatedly puts Hawk in his place.
that is all true.
Yes.
She's great.
Well, I mean, there is a reason we love this book.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
Yeah, for
all pretty much all of the characters are all really awesome characters, right?
Well, it's funny that you say that about Poppy being basic because overall, my series MVP, I put Poppy would be my obvious
Yeah.
answer. Having said that, for series, and I'm counting the prequel series as well, the Fire in the Flesh series, I have to say my series MVP is actually the Fates. So
Ooh, yeah.
That's a good
they've
choice.
got the very difficult job of ensuring that Seraphina and Nyktos actually fall in love so that things can move forward. And they have to work with the victors and deal with the prophecy, right? So
Yeah, that's true.
I looked up the prophecy and I forgot that the prophecy is actually like 4 paragraphs
Yeah.
long. It's shorter than the like woman born of flesh and fire from the west or whatever, east. I can't remember what it is. But I think the Fates are my MVP for the entire series. They have a hard job.
That's a really good point. Yeah. Mindy, who is your entire series MVP?
So I actually went with Sarah on this one, kind of for the same reason. I just feel like she's the one that ultimately saves the day through Poppy. When she's talking to Poppy, making sure that she sort of stays on track and in the game. I don't know. I just feel like she's got an impetus in this story that transcends.
You guys have really good reasons for your choices.
Is your series MVP Hawk for his dick?
No, it is at least deeper than that.
He goes deep. Don't forget that.
My series MVP actually said Kieran because Kieran, first of all, is funny. That was really important to me, apparently, when choosing my MVPs. But Kieran, much like the same kind of reasoning that I chose Hawk, right? Like in the first book, Hawk is pushing the story forward. I feel like in a lot of the series, Kieran is helping the story go forward too, especially in book 2 and in book 3, when Poppy and Castile are struggling through their relationship and not really talking to each other and like not sure how to move forward in different ways. Kieran is always there to be the glue to like help push them and support them in the right direction. And I also gave a special mention to Tawny because they're just 2 of my favorite characters for being supportive and not, I don't want to say like on the side because they're not really, except for Tawny when she's not in the books, but they're super supportive and in tune with these 2 main characters, right? And they know these people and what they need and who they are and the trust and the love and the care that they have, I just think is really, really special.
Well, it's funny that you say that about his snark and wittiness, and essentially he's kind of the comedic relief at
In a
times
lot,
when Hawk and Poppy are going through shit, right? Kieran takes up that comedic relief role. So I did write down like my favorite secondary character, and I did go deeper into like the later books and the prequels. And I have to say, for a lot of the same reasons that you just said, that mine would be Reaver. So if you've not read far in the book or you can't remember who Reaver is, he's the extremely sarcastic, like prefers to be naked Draken that we see, right? So he's snarky. He loves to rile up Kieran. and he essentially helps Poppy move into her primalness. I don't know what you would call that. Plus, in the prequel series, we get to see him as a child with Jadis, and I really love their relationship.
Me too.
I feel pretty confident that we'll see Jadis later in the series. JLA has made a lot of hints that we will, and she's been brought up too many times for her not to be in the series. And I really hope that she and Reaver can reconcile. I want to see that happen.
Yeah, I do too. I hope we see that in A Soul of Ash and Blood next week.
Yay!
As of this recording.
I'm so excited about that.
Who is your favorite secondary character, Mindy?
So it's so funny that you say your series MVPs are Kieran and Tawny, because those are my favorite secondary characters. Kieran, for much the same reason. I just think he's funny. I guess he's a jester character almost. Like when you go back to like Shakespeare and stuff, he is the comedic relief. He's the foil. I love what you said about it being he's the glue. I love that because he's sort of that go between, that he's equally invested in both Poppy and Castile. And maybe not so much in this book, but eventually he gets there. And I just love him. I just think his snark is top notch. Banter with Poppy, and I love his like smugness with Cass too. Like, I think it's just too funny.
Yeah,
and
he's not going to put up with any shit from Cass, which I love.
He's like, you may be the prince, but fuck no. And then for the same reasons I love Tawny. They're both the best friend character, right? Sometimes it's hard to get into the best friend character. They have to be written really, really well. And I mean, I say it every time, but JLA is just an amazing writer. And she writes these characters. They're both best friend characters, but they're so different. Even though they're both sarcastic and snarky, they're very, very, very different.
You bring up a really valid point, though, because in a lot of literature, when you're reading about the best friend character, you're hoping to get back to the main characters. And I never feel that way when Kieran is leading the scene. Sometimes I do with Tawny, I'm not going to lie, but it's because we haven't really seen her for.
She was gone for so long.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's what you're saying about they are the comedic relief, but they're not only the comedic relief, right? They are very important in the whole plot and the characters themselves of Cass and Poppy, right? Like, Castile would not be who he is if Kieran did not exist. And in a lot of other books, the best friend does not have that same kind of weight and that same kind of impact. And I think that makes a big difference.
Kieran has been through more with Castile than even his family really has.
Yeah.
At a certain point, right?
Yeah. My favorite secondary character, I also said Tawny for the same reasons that you did, but I also said Delano because
I knew you would say Delano.
I know. He's so sweet, and he has funny moments too, but I really like Delano because, like we talked about in the scene where Jericho and all the dumbass dude misfits come down to attack Poppy. Delano, without any hesitation at all, protects Poppy and allows and empowers Poppy to protect herself, right? And there are not very many characters that do that for her in this point in the story.
I mean, right off the bat, he does.
Yeah, from the jump, even though he knows who she is and who Hawk is and what the plan is, like he just comes across to me like a good person. And you guys know I have my theory that I think he's kind of her bonded Wolven, even though she's bonded to all the Wolven.
I'm very interested to see how. I want to see, though, the internal struggle when he finds out that her Wolven dagger is his sister's.
I know
bow.
that's going to have to come into play.
It will, and I'm going to be honestly kind of upset if he's just cool with it.
I don't think that he would be cool with it, but I wonder if he'll have the same attitude about it that Kieran did, because when she meets Kieran and realizes he's a Wolven, Poppy's like, oh, hey, about this dagger, I'm sorry, and he says, well, you didn't make it, did you? Okay, then we have no problem.
Different when it's your sister's bow.
Right.
I know.
But at the same time, Poppy didn't have anything to do with it being made, right? Like, she had no knowledge or connection to that. And again, that came from Victor, who is a Victor, but as the first Victor, he remembers everything and knows everything the whole time.
Do we know who made that dagger?
King Jalara.
Oh,
yeah,
little bitch.
Yeah, King Jalara.
I'm glad he got his head cut off.
Made 7 daggers or 6 daggers, and he did it to torture Malik.
Was it all Delano's sister,
yes,
or were they different?
Because Delano's sister, Prela, was Malik's bonded Wolven. And she went to Carcedonia to try to save him and got caught. And to torture her and to torture Malik, King Jalara tortured her and murdered her, and then used her bones to make the woven daggers. And Malik, in War of Two Queens, Malik tells Castile, I knew where all of them were except for one. And now I know that your wife has it.
Oh, that's awful.
I know. It's horrible. What's your score or grade or star rating for just From Blood and Ash book 1?
Million stars. I gave it 5 stars the first time I read it. I continue to give it 5 stars.
I feel like we all have the same. Yeah, like exactly. It's an A plus. It's a 5 star.
Right. And it's great. It's hard to write a 5-star fantasy book because the world building can get boring. You can have too many characters. You can try to essentially bring the reader into too many of your own rules that don't exist in the real world. And JLA does it flawlessly.
Yeah, she does.
I feel like this is the gold standard for other fantasy books for me. Like, this is where I go back to, did I like it as much as, From Blood and Ash? Did it hit me like that one did? I love the twists and turns in it. Kept me guessing. I discover new things every time I read it. I'm not a huge rereader, so for me to reread this, like, not even just for the podcast, but I've reread it before just because. Yeah. That's for me, that's pretty high praise coming from me.
That's kind of the same for me too. It's definitely a 5-star book, and for me, it is also this is the standard, right? Which is also how I feel about ACOTAR, which we talked about when we did season 1. It's the same kind of thing. Like, I think about it constantly, like chills when I'm finished with the book, can't wait to pick up the next one, have to know what happens, want to reread it all the time. And you guys know when I get in like reading slumps, which happens from time to time, I'll go back to From Blood and Ash, and there's only a couple of other books that I do that with, right?
I know the other ones, ACOTAR and The Bonds That Tie.
Yeah, like those are the 3 series that I'll read over and over and over again.
This in The Cruel Prince.
I'll do that one too. I haven't reread that one in a while.
The only ones
so
I
actually pre-ordered today. I got Holly Black's newsletter, and did you see the special edition that's coming out?
No, I didn't see that.
It is like. She said it's black like Cardin's eyeliner, but it's this fully black, like almost like metallic book that's in like this black book sleeve. You can actually get it through Amazon, but I did pre-order that shit right away. It's beautiful.
I'm gonna have
It's only $31. It wasn't a horrible price for a special edition.
That's really good.
I'm literally writing that down.
Yeah,
because I need to get
great.
that. What about your overall grade or rating for the whole series, the From Blood and Ash series, but also the Flesh and Fire series, all of it together?
So I'll be honest, the main series continues to be a 5-star read for me. When I go back and reread it, I do begin to miss a little bit of Hawk/Castile's snark as we get later on, but the guy's going through some shit. He's not feeling super snarky at the time. The first time I read the first book in the prequel series, A Shadow in the Ember, I didn't love it very much because it felt so monotonous to Poppy, but now I know why. You know what I mean? And when I went back and reread it for prepping for A Light in the Flame last year, I actually upped the stars on Goodreads because I was like, okay, now I know where this is going. But I originally felt like I had already read that book. And to be honest, I totally forgot that they have sex in that book because I was like, wait a second, are they about to do it? And I think honestly, that first time I listened to it, I was like, okay, well, Poppy's already done all this. So I wasn't really, because I was listening to it on audiobook.
Yeah.
But if you put the prequel series in, I'd say it's 4.75 stars for me.
Which is still really good.
Right.
Definitely read it, right?
Yeah, there's not very many series overall that I would say that for, because this is not the type of series, and this is the same with ACOTAR, and again with Cruel Prince, these aren't the type of series where the sequel sucks.
Right.
For me, what's the second book's name?
A Light in the Flame?
No, in the main.
Oh, Kingdom of Flesh and Fire.
Kingdom of Flesh and Fire is my favorite book out of all 6 books that are currently out.
Too.
Is that yours too? Yeah. And I think when you can make the sequel better than the original, that says a lot. But I continuously think these books get better, and they continue to surprise me every time one comes out.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I feel that way about the Flesh and Fire series, right? Because those are prequels, and ultimately we kind of know how those are going to end, because the From Blood and Ash books, right? And I think that it's really difficult to write a book where your reader kind of already knows how it's going to end, but to have it not feel boring, to have it still be exciting and still be full of action and surprises and things that we don't see coming. Because I don't feel like, okay, yeah, I know this already because we learned this before. You know what I mean?
Even though we know where it ultimately ends up, she continues to surprise us.
Yeah.
Right? So there's things from this book even that talks about like white wolves and things like that. And then you find out in A Light in the Flame that Nyktos actually can, what's the word I'm looking for?
Transform.
I was going to say transfer. He can transform into a wolf. And there's a lot of unanswered questions in the main series that I think will get answered through the prequel series, which is a really cool and interesting way to do that.
Yeah. And I felt the same way about A Light in the Flame. I loved A Shadow in the Ember, but I thought A Light in the Flame was even better. Just like I thought Kingdom of Flesh and Fire was better than
When I was prepping for this episode, though, I started thinking of Vessies in A Light in the Flame, and I have never wanted to punch someone in the cooter so hard my entire life. I hate that woman.
I was not pleased.
No. I remember Mindy, we had done craft weekend and I was listening to it and I came home to finish it, and that scene comes up where she catches Nyktos and Vessies together, and I was in a horrible mood for like 3 days.
she's
I was
a bitch.
It was not great.
She's even bitchier than the Duchess. She's worse.
Mindy, how would you rate the whole series?
I think kind of like what Deb said, some of it I think I even gave From Blood and Ash a 4 at first because I wasn't prepared, I think, for the rest of it. And then once I read it all together as a whole, it's a full 5 stars for me. It just, everything's interwoven so seamlessly, and I'm still guessing about stuff. It's still, but it's not something that's like left me hanging so bad. Like, okay, when I watched Lost, I'm like, what the fuck? Like, some things got answered, some things never got answered.
Yep.
That's annoying. I don't think that's going to happen here.
And I remember also, for the record, for Lost, the producers in like season 3, they're like, it's not purgatory. And then it fucking totally was. And I was like, so you didn't know how it was going to end.
Exactly.
And you didn't want people to think you were copping out. Purgatory's a cop out.
JLA's got a grand plan. She already knows where this is going.
Right. And
she's giving us just enough and answering just enough questions that she's not leaving anything hanging for too long. It's just genius.
So since we haven't already been talking this entire episode and season about how much we love this book, let's talk about why we love the series so much.
You go first.
Okay, I'll go first. For me, it's the tension, all the different types of tension, right? The romantic tension, sexual tension, action-based tension, the conflicts. It's such good writing. And I mean, I cannot get over every time I read these, how good the writing is. And that, ultimately, if you're not a good writer, your story probably isn't going to be good, right?
Well, and one thing that JLA, I heard her say in an interview, because, before Blood and Ash, she had written 60 books. She was releasing like 2 to 4 books a year. And I've read a good majority of them. They are good books. Are they from Blood and Ash? No. And she will tell you this is the first series she ever stopped and like spent a lot of, she wasn't like churning it out, because she said she was getting burnt out. She was starting to write.
Yeah.
And it shows, right? It shows that she put her heart and soul into the series and continues to do so. And I had put Whitney, just to follow that up, that she just has amazing world building in her books. It's fast paced enough that you don't get bored, but thought provoking enough that you think about it long after you're done reading it, right? So personally, I will probably bawl when the series is over.
I know.
Oh, I'll have total book hangover.
Mindy watched the season finale of Supernatural with me, and I could not keep my shit together.
I was
like
cried.
Ugly crying
for sure,
and like hiccuping and shit. And that's how it's going to be with this. I know it is, but I think the reason for Supernatural and From Blood and Ash, the reason that people love these is the shows make you believe in magic. It makes you believe that there's more in the world than what we currently see, and it makes you believe that there is more in life for you to discover no matter where you are, right? And that's really exciting for me. She does a good job of of making you believe in the magic of the world.
It's probably going to sound like a broken record, but similarly, for me, it's the characters and their dialogue and how well it's written. Yeah. I have to connect to the characters. If the plot isn't something that I'm necessarily into, if the characters are deep and I'm interested and I'm invested in their part of the story, I will continue to read something as long as the characters are good. And her characters are so good and different enough. There's enough variety in characters that you're not bored with. Like, you're not like, oh, that character was just like that other one or whatever. But also she doesn't just throw shit in just to throw, like, she doesn't throw a character in just because, oh, I need a token, whatever.
Right.
Every character has a purpose. And if they don't, she doesn't name them. So
yeah, that's true. Right? And then the other 3 guards died.
So the characters and everything that goes on in this book, it has so much wit. And if a book can make me feel all the feelings, including and especially making me laugh, it's a winner for me. You know, if it can be a tragedy and a comedy, it's gold.
Those are the best stories, right? The ones that make you feel the range of emotions, not just one thing.
So I think for me, what's most exciting, though, is literally the day this episode releases, the cast POV comes out, A Soul of Ash and Blood, which I can't wait to read. There's been so many teasers about it. And Whitney, I really loved hearing about how you're correlating the teasers to the series right now. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure you have something up your sleeve this episode, right?
I do. I have one more from Blood and Ash story time, because a long time ago, or way early in the season, Deb, you said we need to do like a graphic or something on the final battle at the end of War of Two Queens. Because
that's my graphic, bitch.
Well, this is it. It's me and my face.
It's a verbal
graphic. Yeah. So I did a deep dive into the last battle of the War of Two Queens to kind of set up the stage for, okay, A Soul of Ash and Blood is a Hawk POV, but when they first started talking about this book, it very much sounded like it was going to be from Blood and Ash from Hawk's perspective, right? And then all of a sudden they were like, just kidding, it's book 5 of the series. So it's way more than just Hawk retelling what we already know, right? There's going to be a lot of new information. So I thought it would be good to kind of set the stage. Where did War of Two Queens end? Where are the characters? What's going on, right? So the final battle is actually the last 4 chapters of War of Two Queens, which I did not remember that it was
Again,
4.
It doesn't feel slow.
No,
not at all.
If anything, it feels fast to me. I can't
so
keep up
much
with what's happening.
Yeah,
yes.
So much is happening. I had to reread stuff a few times, even though I was reading it slowly and like taking notes for a deep dive. The kind of setting of this final battle, Castile, Poppy, and their crew have gone in deep into the Blood Forest to find former king of Atlantia, Malek, who is entombed and in the Blood Forest, which nobody knew until the War of Two Queens. So Isbeth has put a curse on Kieran, basically for insurance that they're actually going to go get Malek's entombed self, because he's not dead. He's just like severely weakened and basically catatonic, sort of. So the last battle is Poppy, Castile, and their whole crew bringing that basically casket with Malek's body in it. Isbeth takes the curse away from Kieran. Actually, Callum does, but she gives him permission to. And basically they're trying to deliver Malek. And what they think is going to happen is that Isbeth is going to try to like raise Malek from being entombed and like make him be in power again. And they're going to stop her from doing that. But then once they get there, they very quickly realize like that is not what is happening at all. We've got Kieran's curse is gone. They deliver Malek, and Callum basically reveals that the plan the entire time was actually to sacrifice Poppy on this altar at this bone temple so that her blood would basically wake up Colas, who has been entombed in underneath the Temple of Theon in Carcedonia.
Remind the readers who Colas is, please?
Colas,
I had to take a second and think about it.
So Colas is from the prequel series, the Flesh and Fire series. He is originally the primal of death, but he stole his twin brother's primal essence somehow and made himself a false primal of life.
Who is Nyktos?
Nyktos's dad was the primal of life. Mm-hmm. Colas is Nyktos's uncle. Nyktos's dad was killed by Colas. he's gone. Colas was trying to take over like the entire world and give himself like full power of all primals and gods during the prequel timeline. And Nyktos and Seraphina ultimately are trying to stop him. And they are successful because he's entombed under the Temple of Theon in Carcedonia. So we don't know how that all worked out, but we know that ultimately they were successful in entombing him. So Callum has been working with Isbeth to teach her basically how you can wake up Colas, because Isbeth hates Nyktos for not letting her do the heartmate trials with her heartmate Malek, who is Nyktos's son.
1,000 years, bro. Let it go.
Right. She can't let it go. Right? So she wants to destroy. She tells Poppy, I want to destroy Nyktos. I want to destroy Elysium. I want to destroy everything because he took everything from me. And Colas is allegedly going to help her do it. Right. So originally the whole plan was for Isbeth to sacrifice her daughter, because in order to wake Colas up and strengthen him, you have to sacrifice the blood of somebody who is related to the primal of life, who is actually Seraphina. Everybody thinks it's Nyktos, but it's Seraphina, right? So it has to be somebody blood related to Seraphina, and it has to be somebody who is loved. Their blood has to be spilled and sacrificed to wake up Colas and strengthen him. So the whole reason that Isbeth lured Malek's twin brother Ares to the mortal realm was to sleep with him, to conceive a child, to raise them and sacrifice them to wake up Colas. Like, that was the whole point of having these kids. She was originally supposed to do that with Millicent, who is this revenant handmaiden, but Millicent needed to be ascended in order for her blood to be strong enough to wake up Colas. She was supposed to be ascended by Castile, but Isbeth had been torturing Castile, and his blood was not strong enough to ascend Millicent. So that's how she became and why she became a revenant. And that's why Poppy was born, because it didn't work with Millicent. So she needed to do it again. And that's how Poppy was born, right? Ultimately, Isbeth decided that she could not sacrifice her own child, because even though she's super messed up, she kind of still loves her kids. So when she found out that Malek was still an option, she decided, well, he'll work too, because he's blood related to the primal of life. Like, it's the same difference. So I'll sacrifice him instead. So Callum explains all of this in a very confusing way, I feel like, to Poppy. And Poppy and Cass and all them are like, what the fuck? Like, what? The whole time he's talking. So Isbeth takes a shadow stone dagger and stabs Malek in the heart, because that's going to kill him. And when she does that, the process of strengthening Colas starts. Now, Callum says to Poppy that when Poppy was ascended, that freed Colas. And at that point, they just had to strengthen him. Like, he was already awake. He was already freed, but he was too weak. So we learn in War of Two Queens, they were doing extra rites, which was basically sacrificing more people because they needed more and more and more and more and more blood to strengthen Colas so that he could be at his full power. Sacrificing Malek or Poppy, either way, was going to put Colas at his full power. So then this battle at the Bone Temple is really...
You're talking about the end of War.
The end. Okay. I am still at the end of War of Two Queens.
I just am trying to make sure that I'm understanding.
Yeah. No, it's a lot. It's a lot. So the whole goal becomes, we cannot let her actually kill Malek, because if whatever she's doing is really bad news bears, right? So we have got to stop her from actually killing him. And so that's what they're trying to do. So the battle really becomes Cass and Poppy and their whole crew trying to get to the altar to get to Malek to save him. And Isbeth and the royal knights and all those people are trying to stop them from getting to the altar. Okay. In the meantime, when she stabs Malek, the whole freaking earth, there's a giant earthquake, there are cracks in the ground, like some weird juju stuff is happening. And that's basically Colas being strengthened. And so his bodyguards, which are like freaking demon hellhound dogs, the Dakai, they start to literally like crawl out of the earth and attack everybody. So now...
No, thank you.
Right? So now, not only are Poppy and Cass and everybody fighting against Isbeth and the guards and all them, they're also trying to not die with these Decais, right? Okay. So mass chaos, everything's going crazy. And so ultimately what ends up happening is Poppy is seeing a bunch of her friends dying from the Decais, from the guards, and all this stuff. She and Millicent are at the altar, and they have to fight Isbeth to get to Malek and get the dagger out of his heart. Isbeth and Poppy end up in this one-on-one fight where they're basically just like throwing ether at each other, essentially. And like,
it reminds me of the Harry Potter scene.
Yes.
Exactly.
I thought about that too. That's a really good
Voldemort and
yes,
Dumbledore.
a good parallel. Like that's kind of what it feels like. They're just throwing power at each other. And so at a certain point, Poppy sees that, you know, she has seen Hisa be killed. She has seen she's watched Delano die. She's watched Emil die. She's watched Niall die. She sees Reaver going down. She sees Castiel's brother Malik going down. And she sees Isbeth toss her sister Millicent into the wall and is not sure. Well, I mean, she's a revenant, so she's probably not going to die, right? But Poppy gets like super crazy pissed and is like, we're ending this now. At the same time, Serafina comes to her mind, right? Because she has seen this vision of this woman that kind of looks like her, and she realizes that this woman is the consort and told her what her name was so that she, Poppy, could say the consort's actual name and like release her from her sleep and release her power,
right? Yes.
Right? So Poppy screams out the name Serafina. Serafina and Poppy have this weird like shared body, shared consciousness kind of thing where Poppy is herself, but she can feel like Serafina's power and presence and anger and all this stuff. And so in that exact same moment, Poppy completes the culling and she feels pain. Her canine teeth fall out and are replaced by fangs. She has wings made of ether. She's like floating off the ground, like her shoes fly off, and she fully comes into her primal power. And we find out from Nectis later, she is now the primal of blood and bone, the true primal of life and death, which there has never been before. So he hints actually that Serafina is the most powerful primal for now. And it seems like Poppy's probably going to surpass her in power, which is kind of terrifying. So because Serafina is working through Poppy, Poppy is able to kill Isbeth. She kills all the Decais. She kills, I think, all of the Revenants too.
It feels to me almost like in those sci-fi movies when you see like this like clear burst of power come out.
Yes.
That's how I almost envision
That's
it.
kind of how it's described too. Yeah. Serafina's power burst and her finishing the culling, her own power burst. She kills everybody, stops the madness, and, you know, hooray, we won. Nectis shows up at this point. And a whole lot happens in this like last half of the last chapter of this book. So Nectis basically comes in and it's like, hey guys, I'm going to dump a whole lot of information on you. And it's like, you know, classic end of a book for JLA, right? Of like, wait, what? And then the book is over and you have to wait for the next one to understand it. So Nectis tells us a lot of information. So first of all, everybody that Poppy saw die, they're no longer dead. Serafina and Nyktos basically brought them all back to life. Not only the Atlanteans, not only the Wolven, but also the Royal Guards and the Royal Knights. Because if they're going to defeat Colas, they need everybody. So they've all been brought back to life, right?
Did they bring the Decais
No,
back?
because those are Colas's
makes
creatures. So they would not
that makes
want
sense.
them. So Reaver is gone. Reaver took Malek to Elysium. Malek is still alive for now. Jadis is alive, but nobody has any idea where she is. Ares is alive. Ares is Malek's brother and Poppy and Millicent's father. He's alive and they think they know where he is, but we have not seen him as of the end of War of Two Queens. Millicent ran away, like peaced out, Girl Scout, and Malik was like, I'm going to, bye. And he ran off after her. So we don't know where they are, if they're together, if she's ahead of him. Like, we don't know what's going on with them. Callum ran away when Poppy yelled out Serafina's name, and Nectis is like, yeah, because he knows what that means.
Yeah.
And so he's scared. Like, you better run, kind of thing. Nectis is explaining Colas to them, right? Because they're like, we thought this was all about Malek. Like, what is going on? And so he's explaining who Colas is and starts to talk about Satoria, who we learn a lot about in the Flesh and Fire books. And we are reminded in this moment at the end of War of Two Queens that Ian told Poppy the story of Satoria in one of his letters after he was ascended, when he was living in the capital.
I am not remembering who Satoria is.
So Satoria was a mortal woman who was picking flowers in a field for a wedding, and Colas for some reason was there and saw her and like instantly fell in love with her. And
is she the one that like kills herself?
Sort of. He approached her in some way and she got scared and fell off the side of a cliff and died. And so Colas was obsessed with her and was trying to figure out how to
bring her back,
how to resurrect her, which is how that's what led to him stealing the essence, becoming the primal of life.
Bro, you didn't even know her.
Right. And so there's a whole thing with Satoria that's a huge part of the Flesh and Fire prequel books, but somehow Ian knew about her after being in the capital. So there's like a whole question mark of like, what does that have to do with Ian? And
what
like,
was he trying to tell her?
What role was he playing? And like, maybe more information is going to come about that. Nectus is going to stay in the mortal realm to help. Nectus says that everything that was just done in the War of Two Queens, all of this fighting, all of this stuff, freed Colas. They didn't actually stop anything. He's not at his full power because Malek was not sacrificed, but Colas is still awake. He's still strong and he's still free. He's not entombed and stuck anymore the way that Nyktos and Seraphina.
But we don't know where he is, right?
At this point, no, I don't think we do. We don't know if Callum is with him somewhere. We don't know. We don't know. He says, Nectus says, you stopped nothing. It has only just begun. We know that the rot is back. The rot that we see in a Shadow in the Ember and Fire in the Flesh, that is now in Poppy and Cass's timeline. And we also know from the prequel books that when a god ascends and or uses a big burst of power, their body has a very specific response to that. Do you guys remember what that is?
They go into stasis.
Yeah. They go into a deep sleep. That is the setting for the start of A Soul of Ash and Blood. So A Soul of Ash and Blood starts immediately at the end of this conversation with Nectus at the end of War of Two Queens.
I'm really glad that you repeated all that for me because there was a lot that I forgot.
It's a crap ton of information, but that's why I repeated it, because it's just like a light in the flame, right? A light in the flame starts in the middle of a conversation that A Shadow in the Ember ends with. That's the same way that War of Two Queens and Soul of Ash and Blood are set up. Like it's immediately starts right back up. Right. There's no like previously in From Blood and Ash, you know what I mean?
Well, we have you for
it's
that.
A lot. Yeah. I mean, it's a lot. And so I'm really curious to see how much of the book is, you know, this Hawk POV telling memories of the previous books, and how I feel like that's going to be a really small part, and that everything else is going to be like balls to the wall, crazy action. Really I think we're going to get a lot of memories, but I think they pulled a fast one on us. To make us think that it's going to be like all, you know, this whole long book of all these memories. And I think it's going to be
really more about getting Poppy out of stasis.
I think it's going to be
and what goes next.
A lot of new information.
Yeah. Well, Whitney, was that your nerdiest thing of the week?
I have two nerdiest things of the week. That is one of them. Yes. Okay. That research and compiling all that information is definitely one of them. The other one I'm going to have to be very vague about because it's your birthday present. That's a very nerdy thing too.
So that does lead into my nerdiest thing of the week, because we are driving to Texas in the United States on Tuesday. And I had pre-ordered the book on Amazon because that is, just for our fellow listeners, very important for authors to get pre-orders. And I had pre-ordered it and done the pre-order incentive. And then I realized we're going to be driving when my book arrives. So I have already mapped my route to see where I can stop at a Barnes and Noble on the way, because I have to have my book.
Are you not going to read like a Kindle version for that first reading? You want the physical book for the physical book,
and I'll do Audible too. That's the way I always do.
It's funny because I'm like, I want the Kindle version so I can have it immediately.
Right? Yeah.
And then I'll get a physical
I'll
book.
wake up and do Audible in the car until we can get to a Barnes and Noble. Yeah, but for for books I love. Generally, I want to get like the copy in my hands. It's just like a comfort thing for me. Yeah.
See, I'm just like, give it to me. So, I don't care what form it is.
My other nerdiest thing of the week actually also has to do with my birthday, because last weekend my husband took me to this paranormal circus, which had the makings to be completely horrible or to be, I mean, quite frankly, or to be completely awesome. And it was amazing. It was so much fun. I bought this like metal steampunk mask that I want to scare the shit out of my kids with.
I saw that on your stories, and I was like, that's why I didn't go. That right there.
No, you really would have loved it because there was like a paranormal story for sure, but they had like a very Renfield-esque comedic relief that would come in between like their big shows, essentially.
So it wasn't super heavy.
Right. But they had like body contortionists and aerial people and this big like metal thing that swung from the ceiling at the end that this guy would like, it would swing around in circles and this guy would get to the top of the circle, like at the roof of the tent, and then jump and hit it when it went to the bottom of the tent again. I mean, it was so insane.
Wow.
And like your stomach would drop.
I was going to say, I feel like I'd have a panic attack.
Am I about to watch someone die? But they were trained professionals, but it was really, really, really neat.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
It was called Cirque Italia, if anyone's ever interested in the company. What's yours, Min?
I have two as well. One of them is really kind of more my husband's nerdiest thing. My husband and I impulse bought a new car this week. I love my Hyundai Tucson. I've had it for a year. Love it, love it, love it. And we've been talking about going full electric. Mine's a hybrid. And talking about going full electric for a little while. And then we just found this great deal, and it was basically an even trade. So I traded in my like new car that I love for another new car that I also love. It's so cool. This car, it's a Hyundai Ioniq 5. It is like the car in the 80s. It's so the guy that designed this, or girl or whoever, was born and lived through the 80s, and they designed the car that they thought was the future car when they were in the 80s. It is so cool looking though. But
does it have like the Tron lights down the side?
It looks a little Knight Rider in the front, a little bit. And it's got a lot of pixel, like some fun pixel accents. Yeah, you'll have to go look at it. The coolest thing about it, and this is where the nerdy comes in. When I first walked up to it, I was like, where are the door handles? They're like flush to and then when you walk up to it, they pop out. It's like a little handle. Oh, it's very futuristic.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That is cool.
But the other nerdy thing is more mine. So that one I share with my husband. I found out this week that I was chosen to be on Emily Rath's ARC team for Pucking Wild, and I got so excited. And the really, really nerdy thing about it was like I definitely screamed, and I'm sure people heard it in the neighborhood.
I mean,
I would have screamed too. Dang,
it was like
it's exciting.
Legitimately the like best thing that happened to me this week.
Yeah, and just so the listeners know, we're going to be interviewing her soon.
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait.
Well, guys,
Whitney, you and I need to read Pucking Around.
You definitely do.
I know.
Like, I feel like Pucking Around for me is like the 20,000 books that you've recommended to me.
How I feel about a lot of the books I read.
You keep it simple for us, though. You just have the one. Just the one.
No, every time I read like a 4-star above, I'm like, you must read this. But for the record, I'm generally
are.
It's true.
I'm currently reading a Deborah recommendation that I'm enjoying. It's
which one?
Bridget Kemmer's A Curse of Dark and Lonely.
I love that book so much. And then her other series, Defy the Night, is just as amazing. There's just something really special about her books.
I really am enjoying it.
It's on my list.
Get to it.
I wanted to reread Throne of Glass sometime this year, and I don't think it's going to happen.
No,
it's just
a huge commitment.
It is, I know, but it's just there's just too many books. Guys, that's it. Yeah. That's it. That's a wrap on season 2. We are going to take a few weeks off and be giving you some really awesome author interviews for the next few weeks, and then season 3 starts on August 15th. We are starting with part 1 of A Soul of Ash and Blood.
Yay. And then, just so our readers know, after that is Laura Buckheight's A Realm of Ash and Shadow. Mm-hmm. That will be in September. And then in October, we will be reading Kimberly Lemming's That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon. I can't wait.
So excited.
It's going to be fun.
They're all 3 going to be amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
And that's it.
Oh, and sorry, it's not it. I just want to say for the listeners that make sure you're paying attention to our pre-reading checklist because some of these authors might be on for some of those episodes. Not going to say who. You will just have to follow us on Instagram and find out.
At Our Nerdiest Thing.
Bye.
Bye.